Welcome to the Virtual Vendor Showcase, the place where you can meet some of the best suppliers in the short-term rental industry today, alongside some of their best customers. With so much technology available today, it can be a tough job to choose what's going to work best for you, and we're bringing you the finest to make that decision so much easier. So today I'm welcoming Paul Waldschmidt from Owner Reservations, or OwnerRez, as it is commonly and fondly known, and Chad Bryant from Big Fish Rentals. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So, Paul, we've talked before a couple of times on the podcast, you know, from way back to quite recently. So you've answered this question before, but on this occasion, I'm going to ask the question once more. Why did you start OwnerRez in the first place?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. It's good to be back. And you and I have talked about this before. So years ago, as you know, Chris and I started our little shin rent company out in the middle of nowhere with a tiny little insignificant cabin, and grew it from there. And it quickly jumped over to the software side, seeing, you know, the limits that were in the industry. This is long ago, before Airbnb existed. This is before Vrbo was part of HomeAway and all of that. And so, you know, fast forwarding through all of that, and the story's there on our website, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts, but we have really tried to maintain, you know, a really strong foothold in the homeowner and PM experience personally. And the little company Shenrent lives on. It manages about 40 properties. It's run by my wife, and she has a small staff. And over the years, even though we've had to distance ourselves a little bit because of the growth of OwnerRez, you know, it is just monthly, if not weekly, you know, a question comes up about something, and there's our expression, what would Shenrent do internally? And then, you know, we kind of grew out of that and started asking that same question of other users, other customers of our system, like Chad here with Big Fish Rentals. Chad's been here for a long time, and there's been others where we have developed a feature, and in developing it, gone, well, this is how it would be for our giant homeowner segment, but what about Big Fish? What about, you know, I could pepper in other names as well, but, you know, we actually think about some of these users and try and see things from their standpoint. And even from a technology standpoint, we even use impersonation and things to, in our test environments, use their accounts or copies of their account against the new feature to see how quickly it responds and that sort of thing. So yeah, standing firmly within that host and PM experience side has just been the key to all the success, I think. Not just a part of it, but just it's driven everything.
Chad, tell us about Big Fish Rentals. Whereabouts are you located? How many properties do you have?
Yeah, so we started 8 years ago. We're in the Myrtle Beach and North Myrtle Beach area. We found that you know, sticking to our niche of oceanfront and ocean view condos works very well with us, and any other property manager should follow that advice as well, right? You know, you don't want to expand too quickly, and you certainly want to concentrate on, you know, what you're managing, what you're maintaining, that kind of thing. We started with one property that we own personally, and then we quickly bought a second and third one with the profits on the first one. And then, you know, we were having a discussion with one of our friends, and was like, hey, you know, we're doing really well, you know, renting these condos. And they were like, oh, interesting, because I'm getting ready to sell a property. Would you mind managing our property for us? So that's how we got into property management. We proceeded to make him money, and he bought more condos, and he told his friends, and his friends bought more condos, and then his friends bought more condos. And now we manage over 385 condos.
That is amazing. I was a property manager for 20 years, and we got to around 200 before we sold. But I understand we just did waterfront in Ontario. That was it. That's right. All you got from us. So I understand. Mind you, our properties were really spread out, very rural, very, you know, all over the place.
Yeah.
But I also understand pain points of changing property management softwares, and we did it 3 times in that 20 years, and it was painful every time. You've is OwnerRez the first property management software you've used?
So this was the second. The first one, we just weren't, we had no traction. We weren't getting anywhere.
Mhm.
It was very clunky. We switched over to OwnerRez and we found that it was very easy to use. It was very responsive. I think Paul mentioned that, they test very well with scale. So we've been, using OwnerRez since we were, I think, around 10 properties or so. And, they do, have a very responsive, very easy to use interface. We also, leverage overseas workers as well. By the way, we're operating with an employee count of around 10 employees for 385 condos. So yeah, we're heavily reliant on automation, especially through UnderRez and technology, to keep that employee count low, but maintaining, responsive, making sure that, guest needs are met as well. So, we're definitely leveraging UnderRez, its capabilities for automation and, guest check in, check out tracking, that kind of thing.
Mhm. So you may have answered some of these questions, but what features of OwnerRez are the most valuable to you?
Well, the automation piece, we heavily rely on, sending guests welcome emails, sending key codes at a particular time. We heavily rely on the reporting features as well for accounting. We rely on the owner statements because we have a lot of owners as well. Owners portal is very easy to use. So we haven't had any major issues with, the owners portal. But yeah, I mean, it's been very easy to use from not only our admins to us, our accounting team to owners.
Yeah, I see that there's some very active Facebook groups around Paul that compliment and mention OwnerRez just across the board in just about every feature you have. So that's always very pleasing to see, and it's great to hear how Chad is using and enjoying the software as well. Chad, if you were to offer advice to anybody watching this, other maybe hosts, people that started like you, like many people do, they start with their own property, their friends start asking them to manage theirs, and before you know it, you've got 10, 20, 100 properties. For those who are out there thinking about growing, what advice would you offer them when they're searching for a software solution?
So the first thing is process. You want to come up with a process that scales, right? So I'm always preaching to internally is, hey, you can do this when you're at 3 properties or when you're at 4 properties. Does that process scale to 12 to 25? What happens when you get 200 properties, right? So you've got to be mindful from the get-go about having processes in place and following those processes. Otherwise, you will not be able to scale. You'll get to 8, 10 properties and you'll be like, oh my God, this is too much. This is so much work and so much headache. And that's really kind of, the fundamental DNA of our company is that we put processes in place that scale, to 200, 300 properties. So
That's great to hear. Paul, I'm going to turn this over to you to ask Chad a question. If what question would you like to ask of him about how much he values your company? Now, I'm dropping you in on that one because we didn't prepare this one before.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I appreciate those remarks, Chad, and that is something that that is actually an area, ease of use, that we are really trying to focus on more and more, because one of the comments actually we hear is that there is a learning curve and the onboarding can be significant for some users, because we do offer a lot of features. So it's, it can be something to kind of wrap your head around everything. For someone like Chad, it's kind of interesting. For smaller, like starting out users, small starter PMs, we ask a lot about the onboarding process and what could be easier. What areas would you like to see an import, something that pulls you in a little faster. Um, I guess from Chad's standpoint, um, how much time do you spend? This is almost kind of like a support question. So sorry about that, Heather. That's kind of how my brain goes. But how much time do you spend in accounting outside of OwnerRez versus the accounting inside OwnerRez? Because I think for someone of your size, um, I know that there's tools that we're working on right now with deposits and PM stuff.
Yeah.
Would you say that's one of your biggest burdens, probably?
I would say that's probably, from an accounting perspective, we're spending, a significant amount, right? We're coming up with methods. I have, really, really advanced data analytics guys that we leverage that pulls the data from OwnerRez and does, like, for instance, reconciliations with a Stripe account. So they make sure that all the money's there, all the accounts, that kind of thing. So, and especially for, reporting occupancy tax as well. That is a huge burden for us with the amount of properties that we have. And we're able to leverage some of the reports effectively when it comes to that. But yeah, definitely, more in that area to ease our burden for, accounting, because that is a pain point
Yeah.
for us every month. And, with South Carolina, the way it works is we use a third party called Avalera, and we have to report occupancy tax on the 10th of the month. It's not optional. I mean, I've had to ask for 2 extensions in probably 6 years, and it is painful to go through the process to just ask for another day, for instance, because they're under a tight timeline as well, because they have to turn around and they get the numbers and then they have to report them a particular day. And so it's a very compressed timeline, and so we're definitely under the gun, and it's very stressful during the first 10 days of the month, because we close the books on the end of the month, and then we're just heads down getting owner statements out, getting everybody paid, and then from an occupancy reporting perspective. So
Interesting. And
And
the
there's
other
the
question I came up, if I could ask one more, Heather,
sure.
the other thing I'm always interested in is, do you, as you've gotten bigger, do you have, um, are most of your owners like single or one or two property owners, or do you have more and more owners that are 5, 10 in their little portfolio? Or, as you've grown out to like 300 properties, is it still just bunches and bunches of little homeowners?
So there's a lot, and you've got to also consider the life cycle of the investor, right? So initially, an investor buys one property, and our whole growth strategy as a company is to make that investor money, so they go off and buy a second property, a third property, a fourth property. I think we have one investor that has 12 properties now. He's getting ready to buy 2 more, right? And so he just literally takes all of his income and then buys the 11th and buys the 12th and that kind of thing. So he literally is snowballing his, and I think this is, effectively his retirement plan, right? He currently works at Lowe's Home Improvement in the IT department, and he goes and buys a property every like 3 or 4 months or so. And now he's got income for the rest of his life. And he even talks about, income for his grandchildren. He's like, this is something that I'm going to pass along. And he's effectively building wealth for his family and his future generations family.
That's great.
So I love this business in that, that there are several levels here. There's Paul with the software piece. There's you with the property management piece, Chad, and you are supporting those investors. And all these levels have to integrate. The relationship has to be tight. All those parts have to be working, right?
Right. And if they're working successfully, we're successfully changing people's lives.
So how much would you recommend OwnerRez to those people who are watching this video and listening to the audio?
Yeah, I would definitely consider OwnerRez as, as a very good, very stable, easy to use platform, and definitely consider it, especially if you're starting out. The cost is definitely attractive, and then ease of use, automation, and reliability and uptime is huge, right? I don't think we've really had an outage, knock on wood, for years now that we've been really affected by it.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Chad, for joining us on this small segment. Thank you, Paul, for introducing OwnerRez to everybody. I wish you all the best for the future. Definitely, Chad, looking forward to seeing how you grow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.